Before Egypt, before Sumer, before the wheel, before the written word, before the first farmer pressed the first seed into the first field, someone was building. Not building simply, not building crudely, building with intention, with precision, with knowledge of the stars, of geometry, of stone, of time. Building something that was designed, from the very first carved line, to outlast them, to outlast their language, their culture, their memory, to outlast everything, and wait 12,000 years. Waiting for a shepherd's foot to find the edge of a stone on a Turkish hillside. And waiting for us, right now in this moment, to finally start asking the right questions. What you are about to hear is not mythology. It is not conspiracy. Every claim in this documentary is sourced from peer-reviewed archaeological research, published academic papers, and the testimony of the scientists who have spent their lives at this site. And yet, what the evidence points to is more extraordinary than any myth, more unsettling than any conspiracy. Because myths and conspiracies are invented. What's buried at Göbekli Tepe is real. This is the story of the world's oldest temple. The star map carved into its stones. The proto-writing hidden in its artifacts. The network of sister sites now being discovered across the region. And the civilization, sophisticated, advanced, and deliberate, that built all of it, then buried every trace of themselves under the earth. We are going to go deep. Bring everything you think you know about the origins of human civilization. Because by the end of this, none of it will look the same. Chapter 1. The site has a name that gives nothing away. Göbekli Tepe. In Turkish, it translates simply as Potbelly Hill. 4 generations, centuries, perhaps millennia, the local population used it as farmland. Shepherds grazed their flocks across its slopes. The ancient stones that jutted occasionally from the earth were explained away as old grave markers. Medieval. Unremarkable. Not worth investigating. In 1963, a joint survey team from the University of Chicago and the Istanbul University Archaeological Museum passed through the area. They noted the site. They logged the unusual limestone slabs. And in their official report, they classified them as, quote, possibly medieval grave markers, and moved on. The survey team had walked directly over the oldest monumental construction in human history and filed it as nothing of interest. The report collected dust. The hill sat silent. 3 decades later, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt was reviewing old survey reports looking for his next project. He came across the 1963 Chicago survey. He read the entry about Göbekli Tepe. And where the Chicago team had seen medieval grave markers, Schmidt saw something else. He saw the tops of T-shaped megaliths. He saw Neolithic tool marks. He saw, in his words, the obvious signs of a major prehistoric site. In 1994, he drove to the hill. He knelt down. He began to dig. And he never truly left. What Schmidt uncovered in those first seasons defied every framework archaeologists had used to understand prehistoric human society. Layer after layer of monumental construction. Circular enclosures, arranged in rings, each containing 2 towering central T-shaped limestone pillars surrounded by smaller ones set into stone walls. The largest pillars stood 5.5 meters tall, nearly 18 feet, and weighed between 10 and 16 tons. They had been quarried, shaped, transported, and raised with a precision that modern engineers find difficult to replicate even with contemporary tools. By the time of Schmidt's death in 2014, 20 years after he first arrived, his team had excavated only 5% of the total site. 5%. And in that 5% they had found at least 20 distinct circular enclosures, over 200 carved pillars, and evidence of a level of social organization so complex it had no business existing 12,000 years ago. The remaining 95% of Göbekli Tepe is still underground. Still waiting. Let's put the timeline in perspective, because the numbers are easy to say and hard to actually feel. Göbekli Tepe was constructed approximately 11,500 to 12,000 years ago. The Great Pyramid of Giza is 4,500 years old. That means Göbekli Tepe is more than twice as old as the pyramids. Stonehenge dates to around 5,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe predates it by 7,000 years. The earliest Sumerian writing, the oldest writing system we recognize, dates to around 3,200 BCE. Göbekli Tepe predates it by 8,000 years. To put it another way, the same amount of time that separates us from ancient Rome also separates ancient Rome from Göbekli Tepe, and then you'd have to do that again twice more before you reach the people who built it. Here is where the mainstream historical model breaks down, completely and irreparably. For over a century, archaeologists have operated on what's called the Neolithic package theory. The idea that civilization developed in a specific sequence: first agriculture, then food surplus, then settled communities, then social hierarchy, then religion, then monumental architecture. You needed to be fed before you could build a temple. That was the rule. That was the foundation of how we understand human development. Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers. People with no agriculture. No settled communities. No food surplus, or at least, none that we can find evidence of. They were mobile. They hunted aurochs and gazelle. They gathered wild grains. And somehow, they organized, they fed, and they directed a workforce large enough to quarry, transport, and raise 16-ton limestone pillars into precise geometric arrangements across a hilltop in Anatolia. The sequence we built our entire understanding of prehistory on. It's backward. And Göbekli Tepe proved it. The discovery didn't just add a chapter to human history. It tore out the first chapter and handed us a blank page. And the question that Klaus Schmidt dedicated his life to, and that archaeologists around the world are still wrestling with, is, who wrote the original? Chapter 2. To understand Göbekli Tepe, you have to start not at the temple, but at the quarry. Because the quarry tells you something that the finished pillars cannot. At a site approximately half a kilometer from the main enclosures, archaeologists discovered what may be the most haunting artifact at Göbekli Tepe: a pillar that was never finished. Still connected to the bedrock. Abandoned mid-extraction. And this pillar is enormous. 7 meters long. Estimated weight, 50 tons. For context, that is larger than any pillar successfully raised at the site. Someone was planning to go bigger. The extraction technology available to these builders, as far as we can determine from the archaeological record, was stone tools and fire. Flint picks. Dolerite hammerstones. Possibly antler. No copper. No bronze. No iron. With these tools they cut T-shaped columns from raw limestone bedrock, shaped them to precise dimensions, and then transported them up a slope to the hilltop construction site. Experimental archaeology teams have attempted to replicate this process using only period-accurate tools. Their conclusion: to quarry, transport, and raise a single 16-ton pillar required a minimum of 500 coordinated workers. And there are over 200 pillars at the site. The enclosures themselves reveal a level of architectural sophistication that continues to stun researchers. They are not random arrangements. Each enclosure is roughly circular or oval in plan. Each contains a pair of taller central pillars, averaging 5.5 meters in height, oriented along a central axis. Surrounding them, a ring of shorter pillars set into a low stone wall. The orientation of this central axis varies between enclosures, but in ways that appear deliberately calculated. Each enclosure seems to be pointed at a specific point on the horizon, a specific star, a specific moment in the astronomical calendar. Inside the enclosures, the floor shows evidence of elaborate preparation, terrazzo-like surfaces, benches built into the walls, evidence of what may be drainage channels. This was not a construction site. This was a functional space, designed to be used, ritually or ceremonially, in ways we can only speculate about. Animal bones found throughout the site in enormous quantities, gazelle, aurochs, wild boar, suggest feasting events of remarkable scale. Some researchers estimate that the construction and maintenance of Göbekli Tepe required feeding thousands of workers over decades. Where did that food come from for a hunter-gatherer society? The honest answer is, we don't fully know. The logistics alone should be stopping you cold. Think about what it takes to organize 500 people without writing, without currency, without a state, without agriculture-based surplus, without metal tools, without wheeled transport. You need leadership. You need a chain of command. You need a communication system. You need a method of feeding and housing your workforce over a period of years or decades. You need someone who can read and plan architectural space, who understands load-bearing geometry well enough to raise a 16-ton stone without it collapsing on the workers below. All of this, all of it, was present at Göbekli Tepe. A social, logistical, and intellectual infrastructure that, by every conventional model of prehistory, should not have existed for another 8,000 years. And then there is the question of who, or what, the architects were building for. Because Göbekli Tepe was clearly not built to be lived in. There are no hearths, no sleeping areas, no granaries, no evidence of permanent habitation. It was built as a place to come to, from somewhere else. A place of gathering, of ceremony, of something that, 12,000 years later, we can recognize the shape of, even if we've lost the meaning. It was a sacred space. A temple. The oldest one on earth. And like every sacred space, it was built in the image of something the builders believed in. Something they feared. Something they worshipped. Something they needed to remember. Chapter 3. Every surface of every pillar at Göbekli Tepe is covered in carvings. Animals dominate: foxes, vultures, cranes, scorpions, wild boars, lions, ducks, gazelles, spiders. At first encounter, they appear to be what you might expect from a prehistoric people: animal worship, totemic imagery, the natural world rendered in stone by minds not yet sophisticated enough for abstraction. This is the comfortable interpretation. It requires the least from us. And it is almost certainly wrong. Pillar 43 is the most complex carved surface at Göbekli Tepe. Researchers have called it the Rosetta Stone of the site, the carving most likely to, once decoded, unlock the meaning of everything else. On its surface, a large vulture with its right wing extended, appearing to hold or support a sphere or disc. Below the vulture, a headless human figure. Further along the pillar, a scorpion. Above the central scene, what appears to be a crane or ibis. And in the upper register, a symbol that recurs across multiple cultures and thousands of years of subsequent human history. A bag-like object, rectangular, with a handle. The same symbol appears in ancient Sumerian art, in ancient Egyptian depictions of the gods, in carvings from Mesoamerica, and in the hands of figures across the ancient world so consistently that researchers have begun calling it simply the Bag of the Gods. In 2017, a team from the University of Edinburgh's School of Engineering published a landmark paper in the journal Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry. Researchers Martin Sweatman and Demetrius Tsakritsis conducted a systematic analysis of the animal carvings on Pillar 43. Not as art, not as religion, but as data. Their conclusion: the carvings on Pillar 43 represent a specific configuration of the night sky. The animals correspond to constellations. The positioning of the figures, the angles, the relative heights, the orientation of the pillar itself, correspond to the astronomical state of the sky as it would have appeared on a specific date. Their calculated date, approximately 10,950 BCE. The Younger Dryas impact event. The Younger Dryas, a catastrophic cooling event that began approximately 12,900 years ago and lasted for roughly 1,200 years. For most of the 20th century, its cause was debated. Ice sheet collapse, ocean current disruption, volcanic activity. But in 2007, a team of researchers published what is now known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. The theory that a fragmented comet or asteroid struck the Earth approximately 10,900 BCE, triggering massive wildfires, a nuclear winter effect, the rapid die-off of megafauna including woolly mammoths and giant sloths, and the collapse of early human populations in North America and possibly beyond. The evidence for this impact, nanodiamonds, platinum deposits, magnetic spherules, has been found at over 50 sites across 4 continents. And if Sweatman and Tsakritsis are correct, it has also been found carved in stone at Göbekli Tepe. Recorded, commemorated, by the people who survived it. If you accept the Edinburgh team's analysis, and it has not been disproven, though it has been debated, then Pillar 43 is not decoration. It is a record, a warning, carved by people who had lived through or heard first-hand accounts of a cosmic catastrophe so severe it ended the world they knew. And they did what every advanced civilization does when it faces extinction. They wrote it down, in the only medium they had available that they knew would survive: stone. The oldest star map on Earth. The oldest disaster record on Earth. Encoded in animal carvings on a hilltop in Turkey, because the people who carved it understood that stone would outlast them by millennia, and that whoever found it next would need to know. There is a second astronomical dimension to Göbekli Tepe that deserves attention. Multiple researchers, including Graham Hancock, Robert Bovell, and independent archaeoastronomers, have noted that the orientation of specific enclosures at the site aligns to the rising point of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. The star the ancient Egyptians identified with Isis, with the Nile flood, with resurrection and rebirth. The star the Sumerians associated with their goddess Inanna. The star that the Dogon people of West Africa claimed their ancestors received wisdom from. 5,000 years of human civilization across vastly different cultures, all pointing at the same star as the source of sacred knowledge. And at the oldest sacred site on Earth, the builders oriented their enclosures toward it. Understanding why this matters requires a brief detour into a phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. Due to a slow wobble in the Earth's rotational axis, a cycle that takes approximately 25,772 years to complete, the position of stars relative to the horizon shifts gradually over millennia. The star that rises at the spring equinox today is not the same star that rose at the spring equinox 12,000 years ago. To calculate where Sirius appeared on the horizon in 10,000 BCE, and to build a structure aligned to that specific rising point, requires not just observational astronomy. It requires generational astronomy. Records of star positions kept and transmitted across hundreds of years. A tradition, a priesthood, an institution. At a time when, according to our conventional models, none of those things existed. Chapter 4. The animal carvings at Göbekli Tepe have received enormous academic attention. But there is something else carved into these pillars that receives far less discussion in mainstream coverage, perhaps because it is harder to explain away. The two central pillars of each enclosure are different from the surrounding ring of smaller pillars. They are taller, more prominent, more elaborately worked. And they have arms. Carved human arms, bent at the elbow, pressed against the sides of the pillar, hands meeting at the front with fingers touching. Around the pillar's midsection, a belt. A belt carved with geometric symbols. And on that belt, a loincloth or apron extending downward. These pillars are not abstract. They are not merely architectural. They are representations of beings. Beings with bodies, with arms and hands, with clothing. Beings that are neither entirely human nor entirely symbolic, occupying a space that every ancient culture throughout history has tried to describe and never quite succeeded. Something more than human. Something that was there before us. Throughout Mesopotamian literature, the Sumerian king list, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Atrahasis, there are references to beings who walked among early humans and transmitted civilization. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, those who from heaven came. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Neteru, primordial divine beings who ruled Egypt in a time called Zep Tepi, the first time, a pre-dynastic golden age of wisdom and order. The Akkadian texts speak of the Apkallu, 7 wise beings, depicted as part human and part animal, who taught the arts of civilization to early Sumerians after a great flood. The Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, beings who descended from the sky and brought knowledge to humanity before a catastrophic deluge. These traditions span cultures with no documented contact. They describe similar beings, similar events, a similar chronology. And the beings they describe are often depicted with the same visual vocabulary as the central pillars of Göbekli Tepe: tall, arms at sides, belted, authoritative. Watching. Here is the question that serious researchers, not fringe theorists but credentialed academics, are now beginning to ask openly. What if the ancient traditions of divine beings bringing civilization to humanity after a great catastrophe are not allegories? What if they are memories? Distorted by thousands of years of retelling, yes. Wrapped in the religious and cultural frameworks of each civilization that transmitted them, yes. But at their core, a real memory of real events, real beings, real knowledge transmission. And Göbekli Tepe, with its carved humanoid pillars, its astronomical precision, its organizational sophistication, its sheer impossible existence. What if it is the physical evidence of that memory? Not a myth, not a temple to imagined gods, but a monument built by or for the very beings that every subsequent civilization remembered, recorded, and worshipped? We cannot answer that question with the evidence currently available. Klaus Schmidt was careful not to speculate beyond the data. His successors continue that discipline. But the question itself, now that Göbekli Tepe exists in the archaeological record, can no longer be dismissed as the territory of fringe thinkers. It is a legitimate scientific question. Who were the beings depicted in the central pillars? What knowledge did they represent? And where did that knowledge come from? Chapter 5. In 2023, archaeologists working in the broader Tars Tepeler research zone, the expanded project of which Göbekli Tepe is the centerpiece, recovered a small object from a site near the main enclosures. A stone seal made from chlorite, a green, fine-grained metamorphic rock. Approximately 4 centimeters long. In itself, not unusual. Stamp seals were common administrative tools in the ancient Near East. But this seal was not from the ancient Near East's administrative period. Its context dated it to the pre-pottery Neolithic, the same era as Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old. And its surface was covered in symbols. Irving Finkel, curator of the British Museum's world-renowned collection of cuneiform tablets, one of the foremost experts on ancient writing systems alive today, examined photographs of the seal. His assessment, cautiously worded but unmistakable in its implications, was that the symbols appeared to represent proto-writing. Not art. Not random decoration. Systematic symbolic notation. Symbols that convey meaning through form, repeated across the surface with the kind of internal consistency that marks the beginning of a communication system. If his assessment is correct, and it has not been definitively refuted, the seal predates the earliest accepted writing by at least 3,000 years. The accepted history of writing runs like this. Proto-cuneiform emerges in Mesopotamia around 3200 BCE, used for administrative record-keeping, tracking grain, livestock, trade. It evolves over centuries into the Sumerian writing system. Simultaneously, proto-hieroglyphic symbols appear in Egypt around 3100 BCE. The Indus Valley script develops around 2600 BCE. Each system appears to develop independently, in separate regions, around the same general period in history, approximately 5,000 years ago. This near-simultaneous emergence of writing across multiple cultures has always been one of the great puzzles of ancient history. If the Göbekli Tepe seal represents proto-writing, if symbolic, systematic notation was already present 12,000 years ago, then the puzzle becomes something else entirely. Not 3 independent inventions of writing, but 3 rediscoveries. 3 cultures independently recovering a cognitive technology that had already existed and been lost. The visual similarities between specific symbols on the Göbekli Tepe seal and the earliest known writing characters from Sumer and Egypt are not proof of direct transmission. Scholars are rightly cautious about overinterpreting such comparisons. But they are also not nothing. Simple geometric forms, chevrons, grids, nested squares, repeated diagonal strokes, appear consistently across the earliest writing systems of civilizations that, by conventional history, had no contact with each other. The most conservative explanation is convergent development. The same shapes arise independently because they are cognitively natural to human minds. The less conservative explanation is that they share a common ancestor, a common tradition, a common source of symbolic knowledge that predates them all, and that we are only now beginning to find evidence of in the earth beneath a Turkish hillside. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth, one of the most controversial and studied texts in esoteric history, describe a being of enormous antiquity who preserved the wisdom of a pre-flood civilization in hidden chambers beneath the earth, for the day when humanity would be ready to receive it again. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes a time before the gods, before Osiris, before Ra, before the entire Egyptian pantheon, when something older ruled. The Sumerian king list records rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years before the Great Flood. Before Ziusidra, the Sumerian Noah, survived and a new era began. Every tradition, every culture, Every civilization that preserved memory far enough back into the past. They all point to a time before our history. A time when something was known, that was lost, and that successive civilizations spent millennia trying to recover. Göbekli Tepe is the first hard evidence that this tradition may not be mythology. It may be archaeology. Chapter 6. For decades after Klaus Schmidt's discovery, Göbekli Tepe stood alone. An anomaly. A single impossible data point that could, with sufficient intellectual flexibility, be explained as a unique local development. Remarkable, yes, but not necessarily indicative of a wider pattern. That explanation is no longer available. Because Göbekli Tepe is not alone. In 2019, the Turkish government launched the Taz Tepeler project, Stone Hills Project, a systematic archaeological survey of the Sanliurfa region of southeastern Turkey. What it found has transformed our understanding of the Göbekli Tepe phenomenon. Göbekli Tepe is not a site. It is part of a network. Within a radius of approximately 200 kilometers, archaeologists have now identified at least a dozen sites with comparable age, comparable construction techniques, and comparable carved stonework. The most significant of these is Karahan Tepe, located 35 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe. Excavations there, led by archaeologist Nick Carroll, have revealed structures potentially even older and more elaborate than Göbekli Tepe itself. At Karahan Tepe, the builders went further than at Göbekli Tepe. Rather than abstract T-shapes with arms, they carved explicit figurative sculpture directly into the bedrock. A chamber with life-size carved human figures emerging from the stone floor, heads, shoulders, necks. A single extended arm reaching toward the viewer. Faces with defined features. Eyes. One figure appears to show a phallus, an explicit representation of human biology. And at the center of the main chamber, a carved pillar from which human heads emerge as if from inside the stone itself. This is not primitive art. This is sophisticated three-dimensional sculpture, created 12,000 years ago, with no precedent in the archaeological record before it. Pattern interrupt number 6. The sites of the Taz Tepeler network are not randomly scattered. Researchers have noted that many of them are positioned with apparent awareness of each other. Some sharing sightlines across the landscape, others positioned along what may have been pilgrimage routes or territorial boundaries. The implication, still being debated, but increasingly hard to ignore, is that these sites represent not isolated local traditions but a single, coordinated cultural phenomenon. A civilization, or proto-civilization, that spanned hundreds of kilometers of ancient Anatolia. That shared a symbolic vocabulary, the T-shaped pillar, the animal carvings, the astronomical alignments. That had, in some form, a shared belief system, a shared cosmology, and a shared reason for building these extraordinary places. The Taz Tepeler network is contained within a 200-kilometer radius in Turkey. But the question it raises extends far beyond those borders. If a sophisticated pre-agricultural civilization could build and maintain a network of monumental temple sites across southeastern Anatolia 12,000 years ago, what else did they build? Where else did they go? The Younger Dryas impact event, the catastrophe recorded on Pillar 43, coincides precisely with the end of the last ice age. Sea levels at the time were approximately 120 meters lower than today. The coastlines of the ancient world are now underwater. The continental shelves of every ocean are the drowned landscapes of the civilization we're looking for. Off the coast of India, divers have documented stone structures beneath the Gulf of Kumbot, ancient walls and geometric formations at depths consistent with pre-Younger Dryas occupation. Off the coast of Japan, the Yonaguni Monument, massive stepped stone formations on the seafloor, remain officially classified as possibly natural, despite apparent tool marks and right angles. In Indonesia, excavations at Gunung Padang have found layers of construction that may date back 25,000 years, predating Göbekli Tepe itself. We are not looking for a lost civilization. We are finding one, piece by piece, site by site. And the picture it is assembling is larger than anyone in mainstream academia has yet been willing to officially state. Chapter 7. We arrive, finally, at the question that haunts Göbekli Tepe more than any other. More than who built it. More than how. More than when. The question of the ending. Because Göbekli Tepe did not fall. It did not burn. It was not conquered or abandoned or neglected. Around 8000 BCE, after approximately 4000 years of use and construction, the builders of Göbekli Tepe deliberately, systematically, and completely buried it. Every enclosure, every pillar, every carved surface, sealed under tons of carefully deposited stone, bone, and soil. And then they were gone. The deliberateness of the burial is not in question. Archaeologists have analyzed the fill material extensively. It is not natural deposition, not wind-blown sediment, not the accumulation of centuries of disuse. It was brought to the site, selected and placed. The enclosures were filled from the outside in, layer by layer, in a process that must have taken considerable time and labor. The same organizational capacity that built Göbekli Tepe was deployed to bury it. This was not abandonment. This was a decision. A considered, intentional, final act. But whose decision? And why? The mainstream archaeological interpretation is that of ritual closure, a practice documented in other prehistoric cultures, in which a sacred space is intentionally decommissioned at the end of its ceremonial life cycle. The enclosures served their purpose, whatever that purpose was, and were then sealed in a final act of completion rather than abandonment. There is precedent for this in archaeological record. There is logic to it. It is a satisfying explanation, or it would be, if it answered the deeper question of what the purpose was in the first place. Why build something of such extraordinary cost and complexity, use it for 4000 years, and then seal it? What ceremony requires its own ending? What knowledge requires its own burial? Here is what the timeline shows. The Younger Dryas period, the cold, dark millennium following the impact event recorded on Pillar 43, ended around 9700 BCE. Over the following 1700 years, the world warmed rapidly. Sea levels rose. Ice sheets retreated. And around 8500 to 8000 BCE, in precisely the region surrounding Göbekli Tepe, something remarkable began to happen, the first evidence of intentional agriculture. Wild grasses being cultivated. Animals being domesticated. The very revolution that Göbekli Tepe supposedly predated, the Neolithic Revolution, was beginning in its shadow. And at the moment this new era fully arrived, Göbekli Tepe was buried. Consider one more possibility. The people who built Göbekli Tepe had survived a catastrophe that destroyed their world. They had watched a comet fall from the sky. They had lived through the fires, the cold, the floods, the extinction of the megafauna they hunted. They had preserved what knowledge they could in stone. And now, 12,000 years ago, a new kind of human society was emerging around them. Farmers, settlers, people who would build cities, develop writing, raise empires. People who would, within a few thousand years, dominate and reshape the entire planet. And perhaps, the builders of Göbekli Tepe understood what that meant. That the age of the hunter-gatherer, the age of the stargazer and the stonecutter and the keeper of the old knowledge, was ending. and that the knowledge they carried, the astronomical records, the cosmological understanding, the memory of what had been lost, was in danger of being lost again, swallowed by the noise of civilization. So they did what their ancestors had done before the comet fell: they sealed it in stone. They buried it deep, not to destroy it, but to preserve it. As a message, a library, a time capsule, addressed to whoever came next, whenever they were ready to look. Klaus Schmidt spent 20 years of his life here. He said, late in his career, that he believed Göbekli Tepe would take 100 years to fully excavate, and that what lay in the remaining 95% would change human history more profoundly than anything yet found. He died in 2014 without seeing it. The excavation continues. New chambers are being uncovered every season. Karahan Tepe is yielding extraordinary new finds. The Taz Tepeler network is expanding. Something enormous is emerging from the earth, slowly, carefully, irreversibly. And it is not finished. 12,000 years ago, someone stood on this hill and decided that what they knew was worth preserving, even at the cost of erasing themselves from history. They carved it into stone. They mapped the stars. They encoded the catastrophe. They built the temple and they buried it, and they trusted, across an unimaginable span of time, that someone would come. Someone would look. Someone would understand that what lay beneath that hill was not the beginning of human civilization. It was the memory of something that came before it. You are looking now. And the question the builders left for you, buried beneath 6 meters of ancient rubble on a hillside in Turkey, is the oldest question in the world. What did we know? And what have we forgotten? If this journey opened something in you, subscribe. Because the next video goes deeper. We follow the thread from Göbekli Tepe to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth,